Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today it is time to film my wrap-up for May, and this was the first month of my sabbatical. So if you have been watching my channel for a little while, you're probably on the edge of your seats asking yourself, how did she do? How did it go? Did she reach her goals? Did she have fun? And we will get into all of that. The way we will structure this video, first of all, I'm going into some stats that have to do with my goal of reducing my TBR to 0 this year. Then we will talk about the individual books that I have read, and I will give you reviews for every single one of them. And last but not least, at the end, I will talk a little bit about other stuff that have to do with my sabbatical, in case you're interested in that. So this is the plan for this video. So I would say, let's start out with the stats, and that is probably going to be my least favorite part of this video. Okay, just a quick reminder, I started out the year with 37 books on my TBR, so my gut feeling was that it is very feasible to get this one down to 0 this year, and let's see how we did with that. So I did quite a bit of damage to my TBR in April. So we started out the month with 49 books on the TBR. So you can see that so far we have only been going up. The only month I reduced my TBR so far this year was March. So I will have to go and find my March energy again, because this is not going anywhere near how I thought it would go. Now we have 3 numbers that are important when it comes to reducing the TBR. First of all, we have the books that I have read, and I'm glad to tell you that in May I have actually finished reading 10 books, which is so far the highest amount I have read in a month. However, it is only 1 book more than February and April, so it's not like it was like out of the park that I read so many books. I would say it's like tiny little bit more than my usual average, that is between 7 and 9 books per month. So did I think I would do more? Yes, absolutely. I just didn't. Next up, we have the number of books that I have bought in the month. That includes new audiobooks that I didn't have a huge backlog of up until April. And then also that includes gifts. And in May, I received and bought 5 books. So that's not too bad. I would say that's okay. I'm fine with that number. However, we also have the number of books that I have borrowed from my library. I love using Libby, so that number hurts, and it is 8. I borrowed 8 books in May. So yeah, I overcompensated. I just felt the wind of freedom in my hair, and I was like, let's get those library books. And you can already do the math, and the math is not pretty. So if we take this all together, 10 books read, 5 books bought, and 8 books borrowed, I have, in the end, added 3 books to my TBR in May, which means that we're no longer under 50. We have actually reached 52 books. And I gotta be honest, we're now at the point where it is getting unrealistic that I will read this down in the rest of the year. And I did make this promise in my TBR overview video that will come to haunt me. So yeah, what can I say? I'm scared. I'm scared of myself. June has to be the start of my redemption arc. With those horrible stats out of the way, now let's talk about the books that I have read, those 10 books I have finished. And I don't have a lot of them physically because I got them through Libby, so let's go through them. The first book I finished in May was James by Percival Everett. This is a historical fiction retelling of Huckleberry Finn, and we are following a character called James, who at the beginning of the book is enslaved, and he learns that he is supposedly going to be sold off, and because he doesn't want to be separated from his family, he runs away, and on his journey he travels with Huckleberry Finn. This is a very great book. I gave it 4.5 stars. I had an amazing time with it. This is my second Percival Everett read, and so far I have loved both of them, but they were also very, very different. So this is definitely an author I will read from in the future as well. Now, I hadn't read Huckleberry Finn, so I did go into this book with basically no expectations when it comes to the plot. And this is definitely an adventure story because we are following James on his travels as he's trying to escape from this world and this place that is so dangerous for him. At the same time, he's trying to come up with a way to save his wife and daughter as well. And so we see the people he meets along the way, we see his relationship with Huckleberry Finn, and it was just fantastic. One aspect that is special about this book is that in this one, the slaves are portrayed as very smart and educated people, especially James, because he can write and read and he taught himself a lot. However, when he's interacting with white people or white people can hear him talking, he puts on this show of being like stupid and uneducated to keep himself safe, because that's the only way he can be safe around white people. So I found all of it very fascinating and I would highly recommend James. I know a lot of people have already read it because it's such a popular one, but if you have not for some reason, you definitely should. Next up, I finished another library book, and that was I Who Have Never Known Men by Jaqueline Harpman. Never know how to say that last name, probably very wrong, but I don't speak French, so just gonna ignore that. So this is a dystopian novel that is already quite old, but has been getting a lot of hype recently. This is also translated fiction, as it is from a Belgian author, and I think was originally written in French. This is a very short one where we follow a young girl who is in a cage with 39 other women, and she hasn't really known anything else. She grew up in that cage while all of the other women are already older and they slightly remember a life before that, but they have no idea why they are in the cage and where they are exactly. And then one day something happens and they get out. So this is very much an exploration of the question of like, what happens if you grow up in a situation like this? How will that influence who you are, what you're doing? This is also about survival, but then more than survival, like living if you have like these circumstances, and what does that even mean? And it's also a little bit exploring kind of what happened, like looking for answers. But if you go and read this, do not expect answers because there's not a lot to be had here. I did enjoy this one. I think it was definitely an interesting kind of thought experiment, and I think it also worked well because it was quite short, so it didn't feel like it dragged on too much in like these like more philosophizing thoughts about that. So I gave it 4 stars in the end. I'm not quite there with the hype train, but it was an interesting book. Then the next book I finished was my audiobook, and that was Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. This one is the first book in the Rook and Rose trilogy, which is a kind of Venetian-inspired fantasy where we follow a woman called Wren who is trying to con her way into a noble family. This also deals with a world where we have colonizers and people who are fighting against them and trying to free themselves of the colonizers. And I really enjoyed this first book. It definitely is so much more than what you would think from this original prompt, because Wren then starts to figure out secrets of this world, of certain other players. This is very much a heist story because she is a con woman. However, it also has a lot of like political maneuvering and just, yeah, being in the heads of these people who are cunning, but then also they all kind of have their soft spots, which makes them like really human. And it is such a fun time following them through this world. This also has kind of a dream magic stuff, which I am always here for. So I really loved this first book, and I gave it maybe a little bit generous 5 stars. And after that, I descended into my readathon madness a little bit. So things got very chaotic from this point onwards. But the next one I finished was also an audiobook, a little novella, Into the Riverlands by Nghi. This is the 3rd book in the Singing Hills trilogy, in which we follow Nghi, who is going around collecting stories. They have a traveling companion, which is kind of like a bird-like creature called Almost Brilliant, and together they travel the world and they see who will tell them interesting stories. And in this one, the stories we get told through this format are about a region, the Riverlands, that is very much known for the martial arts. But this one also deals with the question of like, what are stories? Like, how can stories reflect actual history? And then also this idea of beauty in stories, that women are either beautiful or ugly, and there isn't really an in-between in a story. While this was my least favorite of the series, I still had a really good time. I think Nghi's writing is just very gorgeous in this novella series. This has such a like folk tale, kind of fairy tale feel to it, and I gave this one 4 stars. Then I finished another book from the library, and that was Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessie Q. Sutanto. And this one has gotten so much hype, and I was really intrigued to see it for myself. Cozy mysteries don't always work for me. However, I would say this one isn't very heavy on the mystery. It really focuses on this kind of found family aspect, and solving the mystery kind of happens in the background a little bit. In this one, we follow an older Chinese woman called Vera Wong. She has a tea shop and her husband has passed away. She doesn't really have a good relationship with her only son, and so she's very lonely. However, her life kind of turns around when one morning she comes into her tea shop and there is a dead man on the floor. And that leads her to start her own little investigation, because she really does not trust the police to do a good job with it. And she kind of builds relationship with her suspects. So yeah, it was really lovely. And while I did guess who the perpetrator was in the end, I still had such a good time with this, and I gave it 4.5 stars. I also currently have the sequel checked out from the library and hope to get to that during my vacation, so we'll see about that. Next up, I finished a book that my mum gave me, and this one is the German edition of a book called Call Your Daughter Home by Spera. This is a historical fiction looking at the south of the US in the 1920s. In this one, we follow 3 women. One is a wealthier woman, one is a poor woman. Both of those are white, and then we have one black woman who has been working for the wealthier woman all her life, and before that, her ancestors were actually enslaved by the family of the wealthier woman. And in this one, this deals a lot with like family, with kind of family secrets, but also just the strained relationships that we can have in our families when we don't really talk to each other or don't really listen to each other. I had quite a few problems with this one, but what I enjoyed is the atmosphere. Even though this is kind of like the roaring 20s time, because this is set in this rural area in the south of the US, this feels very much just like dirty. Like there's only dirt surrounding these people. There is a lot of poverty. They don't really have a lot. We also read about kind of like natural disaster that can take the little that they have, but also the resilience of these people. So I did like the background. The actual story of this, I had some issues with, especially with the way that the black character is portrayed in here. We do have the kind of like the magical Negro trope in this one, because the black woman that we look at here, she can have these like glimpses into the future or something like that, and it doesn't really do anything for the story, so I don't know why it's there. And then also the ending of this, it just did not work for me, and I think it's very problematic and just shows the kind of like underlying racism that is still prevalent in the US. And in the end, I gave this one generous 3 stars. Next up, I finished another audiobook, and that is They Never Learn by Layne Fargo. This is a dark academia kind of thriller novel where we follow a professor on a US campus who is murdering men who are sexual predators. And this is definitely a book that I was interested in, also a little bit hesitant of because I just stopped working in academia. And maybe not quite stop because it's still haunting me in a way. So maybe that wasn't like the perfect book to pick up right now, but it fit a prompt for a readathon, so I decided to read it. And I really liked that in this book we have 2 perspectives. We have the professor's perspective, but we also have the perspective of a student. And around the halfway point of the book, we have the reveal of how these 2 perspectives kind of link together. And I think that worked really well and definitely built up the suspense for the rest of the novel as well. And I think that overall, the way it all played out was quite interesting. I really liked that we actually got to see our main character kill some people, so it was like on page how she prepares all of that, and so it definitely was like violent and bloody, and I wanted it to be. This is what I want from a book like this, so I was very happy with that, and overall I was like entertained. And I think this also just touches on such an important topic, looking at rape culture on college campuses, and that is not only an important topic for the US but other countries as well. So in the end I gave this one 4 stars. This one was also very sapphic and very bisexual as well. Next up, I finished another book for my Asian Readathon TBR, and also a book I will have a complete reading vlog for, so I'll keep this one short. The vlog for this is the next video that will come up on this channel. So we're talking about The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez, and I was so excited to read this one. This was so high in my 5-star predictions, and I'm so happy to tell you that this delivered. This delivered like nothing else. This is a 6-star read for me. This makes all the other 5-star reads I had this year look very sad. This is a book that was written for me. It has my like fantasy DNA all over it. I love it. This one is kind of meta in a way because we have a second person narration where you are addressed, and this person that we're looking at then enters this dream theater, and in this dream theater they are watching a play, and then we read the play as well. And in the play we follow 2 characters, Kima and Yoon, who are traveling through their land to save a goddess. Basically, this is like the most basic thing you can say about this book. And this was absolutely fantastic. As I said, 6 stars. Make sure to watch my vlog for this, where I will talk in depth about all the things I loved about this one. But because I could like blabber on about everything that is great within this, I'll just leave it here. Then I finished Butter, which was the kind of last book I did actually finish for my Asian Readathon TBR. Again, this is a book that I probably did not read at the right time, because we follow a character that is very much into her career. She is a journalist and she wants to make it, and she has this opportunity because of something her best friend told her to interview this woman who is currently in jail waiting for a retrial, and she has been sentenced to prison because it is assumed that she killed 3 men. And this woman is like a very controversial figure. A lot of people say that she's very ugly, she's fat, she's unattractive, but at the same time she's supposedly killed these men when she was like in a relationship with them and when they were in love with her. So it's like very weird, and she's very much like this kind of motherly figure. She took care of these men, she cooked for these men, and the question is like, what what happened, like how did these men actually die and was it her fault? So our main character is trying to investigate that, but through her connection to this woman, her life changes as well, and kind of everything gets turned on its head for her. In the end, I personally think that this book was just too long for me. I had like a lot of chapters that dragged on, and the chapters in this book are also very long. And because I went into this kind of expecting more of a thrilling, kind of snappy book, I was like really taken off guard by the way I had to crawl my way through this book. And overall, while some things did work for me and some things I did appreciate about this book, it just never fully like caught me in my feelings, or I don't know, just gave me something I was looking for. So in the end, I gave this one 3.5 stars. This one is also full of food description, so I would recommend not reading this book when you're hungry. And then we're already talking about the last book I finished in May. And again, this was a library book, and it was The Safekeep. In this one, we follow a woman called Isabel who lives a very isolated life. She has this like whole big family house where she lives that is kind of in the Dutch countryside. And she has two brothers. One is kind of like a businessman and the other one is gay, and they both live in a city nearby, but they don't really come back to the house all that often. The story starts off with her going into the city to meet up with her two brothers, and the kind of businessy guy brother, he has a new girlfriend, and he basically has a new girlfriend all the time. And this time he brings Eva, and Eva seems to be like a very silly woman. Isabel immediately doesn't like her, but then a couple of days after this first meeting, her brother calls and says that he has to go to the UK for a work trip for an extended period of time, like a couple of weeks, and that Eva will come to stay with Isabel in the big house, because actually the house belongs to this brother and not Isabel herself. She's just allowed to stay there because the brother doesn't want to. And so he kind of forces her to host Eva in the house for a couple of weeks. This is a book that heavily deals with the question of ownership and what makes something yours. This is also extremely sapphic and very hot, but also very hot mess. So if you're into that, absolutely read this book. I thought this explored such an interesting theme, and especially this question of, is something yours and why is that, and is like using something as yours, does this eventually make it yours? Like, do you get to keep it just because you have had it for a long time? And all of these questions, very, very intriguing, especially with the context that this one explores. I really thought this was a fascinating book, and I only wished the ending would have been slightly different, because there is something that I wanted Eva to realize about her like motive, about her plan, that it had a fault in it from the start, and she never really does that. So that was a little bit sad. But yeah, such a powerful book, such an important topic, something that gets forgotten a lot in European history, and something we need to talk about more. And I feel like, especially in Germany, we're just starting to talk about kind of things after the Second World War a little bit again. I feel like a conversation is starting a little bit again, and I really hope it goes there, and I really hope it reaches people. And this book is also a great step towards that. So highly, highly recommend, gave it 5 stars as well. And wow, when have I ever had 3 5-star books in a month? So quality-wise, this was phenomenal reading. However, with the 0 TBR, we're not talking about that. So before I let you go now, if you're interested, I know this video is already a little bit long, but I quickly just want to say a couple of words about the first month of my sabbatical, how it went. If you're not interested in that, that's totally fine. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and a nice comment. But yeah, how did it go? So some things went the way I wanted them to, or how I expected them to go. I spent a lot more time with family and friends than I had in the previous year probably, so that was very lovely. I definitely wanted to take this time to have the energy to actually spend time with people, because that is something that I usually just don't have, especially because a lot of people in my life live very far away from where I am, so you can't just meet up for coffee. You always have to make like a whole weekend trip out of it, and if I'm working the week, then I can't travel for the whole weekend and then go back to work. I just don't have that energy. So having that time was actually really lovely, and I loved spending time with my loved ones. Some things did not go the way I thought it was. One thing is kind of my zero TBR thing. However, I must say that just having that freedom of just giving myself the space to read whatever I wanted, and kind of getting these library books I had been eyeing for a very long time, especially because the way Libby works, they do get taken away after a time again. So you kind of have to read them when they're there in a way. So that was really fun. And as you saw, I had some great 5-star reads in the mix that if I had just stuck to my physical TBR, I would not have had those. So not complaining about that too much. Other things that did not go quite as I planned is the whole not working situation, because I did actually end up working more than I thought I would in this first month. And that's also not quite true, because there was one specific thing I knew I had to do, and I have done it now, which I'm very glad about. That is a proposal I wrote, and hopefully that will go through, and then that will be the next step in my academic career. But then also there's just these things when you publish papers and all of that you can't just stop. They will come back and haunt you, as I said in the beginning of the video. So yeah, I did work a little bit more than I wanted to, but I think I still kept it quite low. And we'll see, maybe June will be better. I really hope June will be better on that front. Those were more unexpected things. I did do things I wanted to do. For example, I did bake something just out of the blue because I wanted to before my trip with my grandma. I made some cookies, so that was lovely. I did watch a lot more TV shows. I finally finished, or almost finished, watching Mrs. Maisel. I never know the English title. Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So I have 1 episode left for tonight, and then I have finally finished that. I had 5 episodes left of that for, I don't know, a year, and I just never watched them. So we're finally ticking that off. I watched the new Fear Street movie on Netflix. I watched some other movies. I also watched the Little Fires Everywhere mini TV show, which was amazing. So definitely some TV watching was in my cards again, which was great. And then obviously the traveling aspect. And while I didn't do crazy traveling in May, I started making it a little bit more of a habit to go out of town. Then obviously in June we will expand on that. So yeah, overall I am okay with how May went. I'm okay with it. It's fine. We'll see how June will go. So definitely let me know in the comments what was your favorite read of May. I would love to hear about that. Also, don't forget to like this video. It really helps me out, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye!